So today, the dog pulled the lunch pail. Do we even call it that anymore? Lunch pail. Pulled the lunch pail right off the table, and then her food was in it. Ate the rest of her food for the day, and realized this, saw the wrapper on the ground, and was just sort of. And then, of course, what was really funny is she was sleeping right next to it, right? Just like scarfed it down, and then just went to bed. Doesn't know any different. Just excited because she found some food. And she's pretty food motivated, so we've had a couple issues with her, like, getting her paws up on tables, looking around. But we're working on it. And, what do you do in this situation? You get mad, you wake the dog up, you yell at him. No, I just kind of let her sleep. We had a normal day, gave her a normal dinner. She probably had lots of food today, which made her excited. And, you look at something like that, I'm sitting there pointing at her. What are you doing eating this? Thinking to myself, you got the fingers pointing back at you. What could have I done to mitigate this? Well, honestly, when stuff like this happens, you probably know that's happening. What did I notice? As I was kind of heading upstairs, I had kind of seen the lunchbox a little bit open. She was downstairs. I'll just trust her, see what happens. We haven't trained this a bunch. We're working on it. So could have changed that. Didn't. Paid for it. Next thing was, what can you do to get mad at her? This is not her fault. I mean, it is fundamentally she did it, but she doesn't know better because I have not reinforced this a ton yet. We've just started really working on it, noticing it was kind of an issue. So, in the moment, you just got to let it go. Like, what's the worst that happened? She ate a little extra food for the day. So what? So you got to put that into perspective. Then the other thing is you come home, we're setting up little traps and games, hanging pieces of hamburger off the edge of the counter, have her on a long lead. She gets close, give her a little correction. No, she comes running back to you, give her a treat, and playing games like this. So it's just so interesting in those moments, how easy it is to point the finger. And when what you really got to do is you always got to just, in the moment when you're safe and calm, you got to take a look at what could I have done differently, which is something I'm excited to talk about after we work our way through 31 days of gratitude. So today we're getting there. We're over halfway point. Today was gratitude day 19 of 31, and essentially my work, the office I work at is attached to the gym I go to and coach at. And if you're not grateful for that, I don't know what you're grateful for. It's a crazy luxury how that played out, and I absolutely love it. It's super amazing and good for so many reasons. Take a little break from work, pop over, watch a class, catch up with people, say hey, and the owner of CrossFit Mafia, Brittany, is always just cool about having the hangouts. So super grateful for that today. It was a good day for it. Lots of walks outside. Took the dog for a little bike ride. Had some really interesting conversations. One of the things I've been doing is I've been writing a letter recommendation. Somebody asked me to write them a letter recommendation, and it's a really cool honor. I've only done it a handful of times, but there's a couple of things that have been really cool about it. Is one, just looking back on my history with this person, being in their sphere, seeing them develop, grow, feedback they've received over time, how they've changed now. It's super interesting to see that kind of stuff. And also because it's like I saw some emails that I had shared with this person, and it was just funny to see the way that I would talk and write, because it's different now. But it gave me a good chuckle. And it's just a great exercise for going down memory lane, because you really have to think critically about, I think so-and-so has a lot of, it's a really great work ethic, and you want to tell like this mini story about the work ethic. And one time I remember this clearly is when so-and-so did X, Y, and Z. So it's also been this really fun exercise to, go down memory lane and think about how this person developed. Did I help lead that along? What was my impact, if any at all? And so the way I went about it is basically I thought of a handful of characteristics that I thought were positive and good for this person in terms of applying to where they're applying. And then I wrote a bunch of mini stories based on my recollection, reading through notes and old feedback about this person. And then I've just been parsing the stories down to kind of get to the essential and hopefully like a really punchy, pointed letter of recommendation. But it's been an absolute pleasure, and I've enjoyed it so much, and what a beautiful honor from somebody to ask for that. I would say too, if you ever want to like know what your opinions and thoughts are of someone, you don't have to give it to them, and it could be unprompted, but sit down and write a letter of recommendation for somebody maybe care about a lot, a little, who knows. But it's funny, I think, if you're sitting there and you think, oh, so-and-so has these 5 characteristics, they're really giving, they're generous, they're very kind, they're patient, and then you sit down to write the stories and you can't come up with any stories. I think that's really interesting. It's also an interesting exercise for you to look back on what behaviors people perform and do and how that has made you feel, or what you see that representative of. That was also a cool exercise. Maybe even a cool exercise would be to write a letter of recommendation for yourself, for various jobs or roles. Maybe a good little thought exercise. That was really good advice I got from somebody once. I was saying how I was thinking about applying to something and was sort of feeling a little woe is me, and kind of like one trick pony in terms of looking at, my history and my resume. And what they said was, what you should do is just write down all the skills you think you've learned along the way, even if your career has been relatively homogenous. If you've been doing kind of the same career for a long time, still sit down and write down what skills do you think that you've been challenged with and have developed over the years. And doing that exercise was like really helpful for me. It broadens your view of yourself, deepens your view of yourself. I thought it was a really, really cool exercise. And something else that came up today kind of related to that, I was talking to somebody, we were talking about this in the frame of coaching CrossFit and coaching fitness, was putting artificial limitations on others. And I think I've said some things about this before. I think CrossFit from a fitness program is a really beautiful thing. The reason I like it the most is because, well, there's 2 reasons. Reason 1 is that it can be scaled down to meet somebody where they're at and help them grow from that point. I think that's really cool, and it's built to do that. Second thing I think that is really cool about the CrossFit program is that it is built to find an optimal level of its building blocks to help you succeed. So for example, CrossFit talks about, performing its movements at a high intensity. CrossFit talks about, varying the movements, workouts, range of motions, time domains, loads you lift in a workout. All with the purpose of improving your fitness and also utilizing functional movements to do so. And what is so cool about that blueprint is you can build a lot of different houses with it, and a lot of different structures, not even houses, a lot of different buildings, and build them successfully. And what this also means is that if that is the case for CrossFit, there's an optimal level of variance for a group of people or an individual. There's an optimal level of intensity for a group of people or an individual. And this implies that the program is going to continue to evolve. Maybe aside from those 3 main ingredients, the thing continues to evolve. That and the scaling, I think, is so interesting. And I think one of the things that can be really dangerous for a system that is built like that is, 1, to put an artificial limitation on it, put a cap on it. The second thing that's can be dangerous, we've talked about this before, is saying exactly what it is. I think we know what the definition is. You're going to perform functional movements, constantly varied, and execute them at high intensity. But aside from that, how do you bring those elements to life? Like, there is an optimal for groups and individuals, which I think is really interesting. But what we were talking about is just coaches putting limitations on athletes. I definitely think there are moments as a coach where it is your job to help keep somebody safe, inform them of the risks of a thing, do your best to educate them on the quality of the movement, the outcome the likely outcome potentially if they step forward into something. But if you're constantly telling somebody, or putting a limit on them of what they can do, putting a limit on what they can't do, I think you run the risk of, one, turning yourself into a pretty lazy coach, and two, certainly stifling their growth. And I think there's probably a lot of other areas in life you can apply that to. We do it to ourselves a lot. No, you can't do that thing. No, you can't do that thing. And I think a great way to address this kind of thinking is just simply, if you start feeling that, because we feel that a lot. I was talking to a friend today about this YouTube, separate podcast idea. And I have all these roadblocks to it. But then we were talking, and I just paused in my head, and he was getting really enthusiastic about it. And that made me excited. And I thought to myself for 1 second, I said, well, what's one thing I could do to step in that direction? And it was funny because as soon as I thought about that, for this one thing, it doesn't always become this wide open. I thought about that one thing, and immediately I was like, ooh, I could do this. I could get this thing rolling. And I think if you find yourself someone who's constantly in that mindset of, I can't do that. That's too hard for me. I can't apply for that. I can't reach that goal. It's to constantly, fight that with, okay, well, even if I don't think I could get there, what's one thing I could do to step in that direction? I would put it on paper, write it down. We've talked about this with the gratitude. I think there's a lot of value in that. But just ask yourself that question. What's one thing I could do to step in that direction? And there'll still probably be a lot of things you feel discouraged from doing. But I think what you'll start to build is this habit of, how do you overcome friction? How do you overcome obstacles? And you'll generally be a little bit more excited about challenges. You might still say, I don't think I could do that, but I could do this one thing to go in that direction. And sometimes that stuff snowballs. You'll be surprised. So gratitude day 19, moving through the week and the month here. Excited for Friday. Get to work out with one of my best buddies. It's going to be a good morning, nice day, great workout, power cleans, and wall balls. More tomorrow.